So one of the things that actually caught my attention when we were reviewing our notes for
Mhm.
this episode was actually John's note about lack of animation style exploration. And actually, I have a bit of a counter argument to that, and that is called Into the
Oh,
Spider-Verse,
okay.
that later inspired DreamWorks to create bad guys and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish,
Yeah,
and even like
changing.
with K-pop Demon Hunters
Yeah,
with Sony Pictures.
I would say there's good arguments on both sides because Mhm. John, your argument is that there's a lot of these studios that kind of have samey art styles or whatever. I mean, look at the Disney house style. The Yeah. Disney house style is very much like even from the transition from 2D to 3D, Disney's had this like house style for a while where it's like I don't want to say it's very anime inspired, but look at Bambi. I mean, Bambi was the kind of progenitor to the big googly eyes or whatever. So it's like, in a way, it all is a cyclical. That's a bit It's I probably but describe it as very round and cuddly. That's
Mm.
what it kind of is. Very That's round it. and cuddly. Hmm.
Mm.
And like, give me a second. I think I'll overturn my mic up a little bit. The yeah, that's the thing with house style is that a lot of it's all kind of become the same. Obviously, Hmm. you do get like the huge transition from like Cinderella and the seven Disney princesses or whatever, or
Mm.
and then you get to I can't even remember what the first CG Disney princess is outside of like Elsa or Anna. Rapunzel. Rapunzel, She's the yeah. first one.
Mm.
So Yeah. so yeah, you take Rapunzel actually, and I honestly think Rapunzel's transition from 3D to 2D is like a little bit better Hmm. because they the art style specifically that I believe that they were conceptualized in, or she was conceptualized in, was a little bit more closer to the original house style, where like Elsa and Anna were kind of more conceptualized in the style that was a little bit closer to an older Disney style, like much older, Hmm. like back in like I don't want to say Art Deco style. I like Elsa and Anna's chins are a little bit like more rounder edges, all that kind of stuff. You can even see it in the CGI models. But there's kind of going back to what Jenna was saying is I do appreciate that there's all these like studios now that are starting to have more expressive Hmm. animation styles. I mean, Puss in Boots is a very good example of taking like the first movie was still in that house or the DreamWorks house style. And that's kind of even hard to say because
Like
like
that whole trying to replicate real
yeah,
life
kind of like with
aesthetic.
Shrek, especially
Yeah.
Shrek style, hmm
Mm.
so to speak. I mean, obviously we'd have like Madagascar or Megamind. Megamind kind of fit in a house style, but you had those movies where like there were ones that were slightly off of the house style, but like once you look at the humans, especially the humans were just house style, like generic like CGI human or whatever with like slightly alterated or emphasized features. hmm
Mm.
But then yeah, with after Spider Verse, I would definitely say because Spider Verse obviously changed the script in how characters can be expressive in movies, and you don't have to have all characters be different styles. Obviously, you can have still have characters be expressive in movies, and especially now you can take a look at K-pop Demon Hunters. Obviously, that one's a little bit more of an Asian oriented type of like animation and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, they lean into like that anime style. They hmm especially with some of the girls' expressions. I still need to actually watch it. I'm like blanking on the. I've seen. I love the music. I
Oh
love.
yeah.
I love some of the visuals of it. I blank on the names because I actually need to watch it, but I don't have Netflix. So, um, but but that's another story about like the Netflix part. But no, I think it's really interesting to have like all these like studios see what one movie back 7 years ago did, hmm and they're like, we can change, we can make these movies like more expressive, and they don't have to always now just be very stiff. Like these are
Like
actors in a movie. Yeah, they're
like
not.
realistic details and such. They can actually be more cartoony and and actually this whole samey art style sort of thing has actually reminded me about y'all remember during the mid 2010s when there was like the shift from okay, maybe I should set the scene here. Going back, going like jumping around in time real quick. The
Mhm.
with the 2000s, like 90s to like mid 2000s or so, there was like the sharper, angular, more detailed textures and shading for animation styles. But then around the mid 2010s or so, it started to become more like rounded and soft and fluid and stuff like that. And it was also around that time where people really started to complain about the prominence of all of those things in TV animation everywhere and that's when like the thing is with the usage of the word Cal art style as a derogatory term, it's like what these people are actually frustrated by. And it's actually this really got me thinking about like how prominent the internet discussion was for this kind of
Oh,
thing
yeah, definitely.
like for like of course there are valid criticisms with the round art style of
Hmm.
that time, but the internet aspect of it got me thinking if the sharp angular detail style of the 2000s came to prominence in the 2010s when the internet really started to gain momentum, I think people would say the exact same thing that they did for the round with the soft rounded style.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And I think that it's like what people are frustrated about, or what are actually frustrated about, is I like you were mentioning, John, in that
Mhm.
note, that it's just the lack of individuality from creators and companies, and none of them are really standing out art style wise. And it's
yeah,
not saying
Mhm.
like it's okay to draw inspiration from things you grew up with, or
Mhm.
even like simply just doing what everybody else was doing. But it's like at some point, as I sometimes say, you got to leave the nest and learn to fly sometimes. And it's
Pretty
just,
much.
yeah, sometimes it really is just artists going off of what was popular or what they grew up with. And
Mhm.
there's little like we've always been doing this, but it's just the
Yeah.
internet made such a big deal about it because now it's easier than ever to put young and aspiring artists on full blast and mock them relentlessly for like a week or so as soon as a
yeah,
negative comment shows up.
Well,
yeah.
the thing is that,
Yeah.
oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jen.
The thing is that the whole point of like when Disney created the animated studio, the whole point was to create an animated studio that was going to do things so differently. Like every movie, they wanted to try something new. They wanted to go beyond. They really wanted to go the beyond, and they really wanted to explore different styles, different ways of doing animation. Like that was the whole point of it. In fact, there's a movie short called, I think it's called The Paperman.
Oh
And
yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
that short was actually supposed to be the style for Tangled. That was the concept style of what they were thinking of doing with Tangled. And then when they were like, "Oh, could we do this?" and they're like, "No, let's just do 3D then."
Yeah,
But I really would have wondered what would have Tangled looked like in that style if they
there,
had done that style.
there are a couple of characters that I definitely feel would have worked better in 2D just because of
Mhm.
like the design. Like some of these characters, the 2D design, you compare them to the original, they carry the design a lot better than the three-dimensional design, which kind of, I don't want to say flattens, but like you take like a, I know this is a bad example, but
Mhm.
you take, this is not a dig on Brave.
Mhm.
Like you take Merida's big like mane of hair, which obviously like the animators did as much as they could with that hair in 3D. But
Mhm.
like in 2D, either there could be a lot more expression. But there's also a counter argument about characters that actually work a lot better in 3D. Yes, I've seen like characters like Wreck-It Ralph in
Mhm.
2D. Like there's some good stuff. You could argue like Wreck-It Ralph could have worked in 2D, but I feel like especially for what they were going for with
Mhm.
that whole movie, the first one. I don't even consider the second one the movie. I
Yeah.
don't even. We're just gonna forget that movie ever existed. Um, but like the first one, it just, especially with video games, and maybe that's a bad thing to say.
Yeah.
Games equals realistic, but I think because they have, you could kind of
Mhm.
see that like not disparaging styles, but like separate
Mhm.
styles, even though it's still kind of in-house style. Um, where you have Ralph and Felix are very Nintendo, so to
Mhm.
speak. And then I can't remember um the the Colonel lady's name off the top of my head, but she ends up with Felix. Her
Mhm.
style is like a little bit like, obviously she's taller, more angular. She's definitely like a little bit more like Halo or like FPS inspired, or it's
Or like
definitely more
Metroid or something.
Metroid-ish, yeah,
Mhm.
Metroidvania-ish kind of style, where it's pseudo anime, pseudo realism. Obviously, like Sugar Crush, all those like characters are chibi anime characters, obviously. Like, but
One of the movies
yeah,
that I've seen like the behind the scenes of is like for example I think it's the Jim Carrey version of A Christmas Carol. And you watch the behind the scenes of like how they did that movie, and a lot of the movements from for their animated movie was literally people in dotted suits,
Yeah,
and they put
it
like
was
dots on
motion
their
capture.
faces. Yeah, the whole thing was motion capture. Yeah, here Disney. Okay, Disney, how come we're not doing more motion capture animated movies? Think of how much time you would save
I
in
think
motion capture.
I
Or
think
like
that
how
was a. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say like or how much time you would save by doing or how much time and money you would save by doing practical effects
There you go.
instead of overworking and underpaying your CGI artists.
Yeah, I mean, like, because
Exactly.
I think that's the thing why that era of CG movies didn't work out for so long, is because obviously there was also the uncanny valley effect, because
Mhm.
the Christmas Carol is it's a good adaptation of the movie. I mean, the book. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a good adaptation of the movie, and yeah, Jim Carrey plays like six or seven of the characters. Um,
Or like I think
yep,
that was Polar Express where he
that
played like
too.
multiple characters, I think. But
Well,
no, that
that
was
was
Yeah.
no
Tom
wait, no.
Hanks.
No, that was Tom Hanks. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
No,
thinking Tom Hanks.
Jim Carrey played Scrooge. I think he played the nephew. He played the Ghost of Christmas Past, and I think Present. Um, there was like two or three more,
Oh, okay.
but it's just there. There's another like a little bit of a counter argument. I know we have a couple of different arguments, but I definitely want to put this as, I think, kind of going back to your thing, Jenna, about like expressing styles, is that some of these movies are shooting these movies rather than like an actual like movie framing, especially like movies like Spider-Verse or K-pop Demon Hunters. They're framing them like comics because they know they're
Yeah.
animated. They know they're
Yeah.
animated, especially if it's like something that's very comic booky,
Yeah.
very, dare I say, manga-y or whatever in
Mhm.
some cases or whatever. they're framing it in a way so that it looks appealing to the eye in like in a sort of way that like people that are comic readers would like.
Hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are what's the word, homages to obviously movie shots, but
Hmm.
you look at movie shots that you get live action directors that are have been doing this a lot more. Obviously you get like I don't want to say savant, but savant might be a good term too, like Wes Anderson. You look at the Wes Anderson shooting style, and that is it's very art housey. That's just his whole thing. I understand. And Wes Anderson has that specific style that you could probably put a lot of his work into a book, like
Yeah.
illustrated book.
Yeah.
It's that framing. It's I mean, obviously, it's probably not a real like
So
100% solid argument, but you know, it's
so I guess in a way it's like animation styles really do need to like learn how to fit within like what are they going for? What exactly are
yes.
they like what kind of feel are they looking for instead of just basically copying what everybody else is doing?
Here's the thing. I thought I wanted to share. I know we kind of got a little bit off topic. I wanted to mention is that you know, obviously, and I mentioned this before. You know, we were talking about Scooby Doo clones, like the part one of this discussion. Is
Hmm.
that not only Scooby Doo clones, but for the past like even up to today, I mean, there's you can argue like in the '90s, there's this huge wave of like different creators that left like Hanna-Barbera that had their like own style, and you know, but like from the '60s even up all the way to the '80s, there is very much like you look at G.I. Joe, He-Man, Transformers, just any of these action cartoons. It's very much basically having a realistically proportioned character into like this into this cartoon, and obviously you're gonna have like crazy wacky monster of the week or whatever.
Hmm.
Then you know you get the big anime boom of the late '90s, early 2000s. You get all these like pseudo anime cartoons that are being produced and released or whatever, and it's very much trying to copy these '80s and '90s manga artists. And
Yeah.
obviously, then you come to the 2010s. We get the kind of going back to Rubber Hose, essentially, in a sense, looking at
Hmm.
Adventure Time and or regular show.
Adventures.
Yeah, I would hazard to say, the '90s had all this experimenting with like late '80s, early '90s, because obviously you get like Tailspin, Cart,
Hmm.
Darkwing Duck. You know, those were like that
DuckTales.
little bit of
Yeah.
it was that little bit of old house style, but then like now we have the opening for like stuff like Gargoyles, which and then you have BTAT, which obviously Gargoyles was very like stylistically based off of, but there's a lot of like Spielberg-esque animations where there's a lot of arguments to be made about,
Hmm.
I don't want to say, oh, the '90s were a lot better for animation, but I feel like they were very experimental.
Hmm.
You take the late '90s, and there was all those like late '90s, early 2000s cartoons that weren't, they all didn't fit in a house style. Look at Cartoon Network, look at
Yeah.
Nickelodeon. They had all these different styles of like you had SpongeBob versus Fairly Odd Parents. Obviously, Fairly Odd Parents had Danny Phantom shoot off, Jimmy Neutron. I feel like that span of like 10, 15, 20 years was
Hmm.
very experimental for animation. And now it kind of, I don't want to say kind of resanitized to have like art
Well, I
styles
think
that are kind of similar.
well, I think another thing as well is that I feel like what it's I just want to mention that no matter which style, the creation of animation is equally as difficult, no matter which style it is. But I think what made the process easier is technology just simply has improved.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and also another thing as well is that I think with studios in the mid 2010s, because what was also happening in the mid 2010s around that same time, like early to mid 2010s, was that companies were shifting their logos and design. I think it started with like Windows and iOS started to become more sleek, minimalist, flat design trend that was going on. And studios were just simply going off of what was popular around that time. And it's also got me thinking about it's not like showrunners have any say in what the final product is going to look like. They may have showrunners and creators may have experimental ideas and discussion like they may have experimental I like art styles,
Hmm.
but the studios may be like, oh, can you make it look like this popular show or make it look like this popular trend? And it's not like and it's just not just the show creators have to follow that, but also the animators. It's all the animators are doing is just animating what they're told to animate essentially. It's like they're just going off of what studios want, really.
If if
And also
there's
yeah.
oh, I was just going to say, and also another thing as well is that people don't realize that the TV animation industry is actually really small. So a lot of the
Yeah.
same people work on the same project. So that's just another
Yeah.
thing to take into
Yeah.
consideration.
Not to mention outsourced animation, and that's just like a small note,
Yeah.
Hmm.
obviously, where there's a lot of miscommunication. Obviously, I keep saying that word like 97 times. But take for example, especially with cell animation, where I want to say I don't want to just like bring up Transformers or hyperfixations, but there was especially in the era of cell animation or even modern animation, but you see a lot more in cell animation where they had to get it out, and these kind of arguments kind of come together is a quantity versus quality with outsourced animation is look at
Hmm.
Transformers, especially later on seasons where there's this very infamous frame of the Autobots like loading themselves up onto like a toy this giant planet kid's toy spaceship or whatever that he can just like yeet out into the stratosphere for some godforsaken reason. They had like a really bad overlay job on that like whole spaceship cat situation going on, and that was very prevalent back in the day too because like this stuff was outsourced to like Korea, Japan, and China, Taiwan, and obviously there's like language barriers, so you would get stuff where it's like, oh, this shot was overlaid on that one. And I think I'll say another thought I had. I just kind of jumped
Well,
off on that. It yeah, no.
I was just going to say another outsourcing animation fiasco was basically how uh was with Pebble and the Penguin, where essentially, I think if I remember correctly, I think what happened was they were nearing completion, but then the studios were like, "Hey, can you like cut out this entire character and remove whole scenes and like it almost feels like can you just basically restart the entire thing or whatever?" And then they just didn't have time, so they outsourced the entire thing. And when you actually look at the final product, you could really tell which ones are the outsourced animations. And it kind of just sucks looking at it because I feel like Don Bluth and his team were just screwed over by the studio by the like the corporation.
I mean, Don Bluth's style is usually pretty mistaken for Disney. I know a lot of people who have said, like, for example, saying like, "Oh, Anastasia is a Disney princess," but I mean, she probably is now, but she wasn't back
I
then
mean, by legal
because,
standards.
Well,
yeah,
I
by
I
legal
I refuse.
standards, yeah.
Well, but I refuse to quantify. I refuse to quantify Anastasia as a Disney princess because Disney would never make a film like that.
Ooh,
Exactly.
ooh, yeah,
They
I
w-
was gonna say,
they wouldn't have had the bones to do that.
yeah, I was gonna say Don Bluth. Obviously, if I remember correctly, Don Bluth was a ex Disney animator.
Yeah, he
Yep.
was. He
So,
was.
like, obviously, his like part of his style was I don't want to say a a
He
staple
was
of like
he
his
was just
era. Well,
he
before
was
he
just
left Disney, he had an impact on the style of the era too.
he was just kind of going off of what he was taught. That's kind of
Yeah.
it, really.
Yeah. If there's a if there but if there is an animation style, I really want to see the behind the scenes of. I don't know if you guys have heard of the show. Sadly, Amazon canceled it for no good reason. It was called The Wheel of Time. And The Wheel of Time made you can I think you can find the episodes on YouTube anyway. But they have these like behind the like these backstory animated movies and they look fantastic. And I was thinking like what if someone did like a high fantasy epic movie franchise in this style? Like it would look pretty darn fantastic. I'm surprised they didn't do that style for that Lord of the Rings animated movie, but whatever.
Uh,
Um,
I was
whatever.
gonna say I almost said Ralph Bakshi. That's not the style, but
No.
whenever I think of animated Lord of the Rings, obviously they did that newer literal anime for Lord of the
Hmm.
Rings, but all I can ever think of is when I think of animated Lord of the Rings, it's the
Like The Hobbit or the
that old, yeah, that old Hobbit movie or the
hmm
old like 70s animation
Rankin and
rotoscoped
Bass.
Rankin Bass. That's it.
Yep.
Rankin Bass. I'm thinking Christmas movies like that animation studio. Obviously,
Yeah.
that animation is outsourced sometimes, but that's very much that's whenever I think of like animated Lord of the Rings. We were talking about Don Bluth, but there's a
Hmm.
segue with like you talked about animated Lord of the Rings. We were talking about animated Lord of the Rings, but I mentioned there is this thing about Don Bluth style kind of being imprinted into Disney style
Hmm.
because he had um Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians. I especially can see it in the way that Don Bluth animates characters in 101 Dalmatians, Aristocats. He's a character animator in Aristocats, Robin Hood. I would definitely say the Rescuers. Especially look at the Rescuers, Brave Little Toaster, Great Mouse Detective. It's that very much these I don't want to say the characters are over animated. You know, when people think of like Disney animation, like this era of 1955 to 1987, a lot of people like to think of when Disney animation was like fluid, still in 2D, still animation,
Hmm.
and I mean. In necessity, that's like because of like Don Bluth or James Baxter or all these like super dedicated animators. It's
Hmm.
but there was another segue I think that definitely needs to be discussed
Hmm.
is you know what? It's a slight jump, but we're still on the topic because we were on the topic of you know why I said Ralph Bakshi? Why I thought of Ralph Bakshi? The Lord of the Rings, Ralph Bakshi did a couple of like realistic like cartoon food movies. Obviously, he did Fritz the Cat. I think that's why I was thinking Ralph Bakshi. That's my
Hmm.
segue. But I
Okay.
think there's a thing about there's always the stigma against adult animated movies. Obviously, not safe for
Hmm.
work adult animated movies, but like
Hmm.
more mature,
Hmm.
like more this subject matter that we wouldn't really be able to talk about to
Well, I think the
kids.
problem is for some reason now, most studios equate adult animation to immature uses of swearing and violence and sexual stuff and all that. And it's like, no, that just makes you look
Yeah,
even more childish than you already are.
It seems today that all you see is violence in movies and
like
sex
on
on
TV.
TV. Where are those good? No, I'm
Where
not gonna.
those good old fashioned
But
days that you used to laugh.
but
Whoops.
yeah. Anyway, anyway, I think it's no. You're right though. I think sometimes that it's better to not be so sanitized
Mm,
for some of these things, but not be so vulgar at the same time
yeah.
Yeah.
to
And
where
and and I even actually heard this comment at one point that if the same creators that worked on the like really good family friendly shows like Gravity Falls and such, they would actually be able to create like actual good adult animated shows and stuff. They would just
Yeah.
need to do is just turn off the censor and filter.
I I would like, yeah, there's a good couple arguments with that. Obviously, we have a lot of these movies that have innuendo. That a lot of these movies have innuendo that they sneak in, but I think a lot of people misunderstand like what innuendo type of stuff works, like what would be too racy. Obviously, you can make a sleight of hand innuendo joke, but like don't force the
But it's,
joke.
it's like but it's like that's not like what I meant
No,
was.
no, 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 no.
Yeah, it's just
Make
what
your
I meant.
argument.
It's just what I meant was those same people that worked on those really good family-friendly shows would be more than capable of that actually like tackle mature topics respectively. They would be able to do
Hmm.
that just fine with adult animation. All they would need to do is just turn off the censor and filter bar. So that's just all I was saying at that point.
No, I get it, and then that's the thing. Sometimes we can misinterpret what we're kind of saying too. And like I think you know, I wish we could have seen what Hillenberg would have offered for any type of adult animation, because
Hmm.
obviously you get a lot of stuff that he snuck into like some of these shows, and there I know what I'm trying to say. I'll let John go because I can't, like, I'm having a hard time thinking with just a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you've said, these companies that want to like dumb down the personalities of characters in adult animation. I mean, there's way you can do adult animation without dumbing people down, without making them immature. It's been done before, and I really think that if they were to at least try to say, hey, we want to actually give some time to these characters or give some time to this story where we actually can have, a reasonable conversation of care with these characters. And like, I don't know, it's just kind of sad. And sometimes when you take away what makes a show or a movie of why it's known for that, then it's kind of like, well, why are you even making this anymore? You're not even going with the thing about whatever.
Well, it's just also the problem is it's
Mhm.
just the classic executive tendency to see something popular and then try to find that one thing that made it so good, but not understanding that what made that show good at all or movie
Yeah,
good at all was everything being put together and not just this one thing. And that it's that one thing that they seem to hyperfixate on for some reason.
yeah, pretty much so. I mean,
And
it's kind
also,
of
also another thing as well that I really wanted to mention that I felt like we could have mentioned in part one, but another thing that executives don't seem to understand is stop motion animation. It's like
Exactly, that too.
I would argue that it is even more difficult and underappreciated than 2D animation
Hmm.
for the simple reason that technology has advanced to a point where we can just do the whole animation, whether it be a 2D or 3D, on the computer. And sometimes even the computer can help fill it in for us, even. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously it's still hard, whether you're doing it by hand or on a computer or whatever. But when it comes to stop motion, there's just no there's just no easy way to automate it. As
yeah,
Hmm.
the main action of creating the thing is by hand, and since it
Yep.
takes a long time to create it, most studios just don't make them. They don't make a whole lot of high budget stop motion animated movies, like,
Yep.
except for like a few dedicated studios that focus on stop motion, and for some reason it's not profitable for some reason, and like the
Mm.
wider general
it's weird.
crowd for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
all
it is weird.
all I have to say is that props to Leica and Armin Animation for continuing to do what they do. It's like, oh my gosh, man, keep doing what you're doing. And also, I'm
Yep.
actually really excited for Leica's new movie that I think it's going to come out next year, Wildwood. It's
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
looks so good.
yeah, I think the with stop motion animation, obviously we do have a lot of computers that help with tweens and all of this kind of stuff. But I think yeah, a lot of people just want that instant gratification.
Hmm.
It's going back to the quantity versus quality of getting stuff out sooner over like the quality of the animation. Obviously, like, there's more. I don't want to say you can see when something's rushed out. Obviously, you can see the lower quality of like the animation or like the strain it put on the animators.
or sometimes it's not even just like rushing it out. Sometimes it feels like they just kind of gave up or something. They gave up halfway
Yeah.
through, like what you see with the art style of Wish, that movie that I'm sure most people have forgotten about until I mentioned it now. And like you look at it and it's like you can tell that I feel like they wanted to do 2D animation, but the way that they describe 2D animation, like the excuse for using 3D animation as like we want more control over camera and character expression. And I'm sitting here like, AKA, that's another saying for 2D animation is hard. And I'm just sitting here like, and then you look at the final product and it's like, I did they just did they just like give up? It just looks unrendered. It just looks unrendered. Like, what the heck happened?
And I don't this might be a really stupid just like thought or not little rant maybe, but I feel like I don't know if there's like the stigma around like stop motion animation where people think it's like, oh, you just it's just taking pictures of like dolls or whatever, and for some reason that's inherently like lesser. It's like, oh, it's not real animation because you're taking pictures. Is like it takes as much effort, if not, I don't want to say more. Obviously, there's a whole like thing
I
with actual animation that they both have their scrutiny and obviously their hardships.
But
Um,
also, I feel like another thing as well is I feel like as technology progresses, I feel like there's
Mhm.
almost this innate sort of superiority of this new technology is better than the one that came before, when it's like that's just not true,
I mean, look at it.
really.
I mean, look at a lot of this AI slop that's being put out by like people. Your
Yeah.
grandma's watching like AI videos on full blast or whatever, or and somebody they don't understand it. There's people that don't understand what it is, and they think, oh, somebody just animated this thing really weird. weird. It's like, no, this is a computer that doesn't understand how animation is, or it sources all this stuff, and that's a very much quantity. There's a lot of quantity over quality when it comes to a lot of this crap.
Mhm.
And there it was always the arguments with like the transition from 2D animation to not 2D, from cell animation to digital, then 2D cell animation or 2D digital animation to 3D is, all of that is like, oh, it's the future of animation, or they'll take us more seriously if we give in to this, big thing or this new hype fad. It's like, no,
But actually,
yeah,
yeah.
no,
But I was actually sorry. Did you want to finish that?
no, you can go.
Okay. Well, actually, something that I actually this kind of goes back to the whole thing about technology progressing as it is, and people's
Yeah.
I feel like we are reaching a point, especially recently, like a year, like this year or two ago, like there has been this shift away from that minimalist flat design to being to going back to that more sharper, more detailed textures and shading of like something reminiscent of the 2000s, like with companies logos
Mhm.
are being like either redesigned or at least tweaking the designs to be something more reminiscent of the 90s to mid 2000s. And actually, this is something that I noticed that there is actually a rise in 90s to mid 2000s nostalgia in larger media, precisely because I actually feel like while it is true that design trends wax and wane and all that,
Mhm.
but I feel like with the flat design trend, I feel like that disconnect towards it became really like that discontent for
I
the flat design came really really quickly
I have
to the point they
Mhm.
seen
were like, wait a minute, what the heck is that? This is not okay. So
you
it's
mentioned
like,
that and I'm seeing some. There was that new iOS update, and I want to say it's very. There's a little bit of Fruitiger arrow in it, even though it's still like in their little pseudo minimalism or like very minimalistic, but also slightly maximalistic. Like I do like the maximalistic era of like a lot animation and like design. And I obviously understand like somebody put it out and give it a good reason as to why like you get a lot of buildings that feel very corporatized, very sanitized, is because if a business goes out of if that business has to move from that building, another business can just take its place, and you're
Mhm.
not going to go, oh yeah, it'll take all these Pizza Huts for example. Pizza Hut leaves the building, but the building still looks like what a Pizza Hut looks like. Somebody's going to be like, "Oh, we're going to go to the place that's in the old Pizza Hut." That's what happens, and that's where the argument is if you have these buildings look kind of the same, which obviously it's very unfortunate. These buildings kind of look the same, then one business can just like step in and there's no like nobody can tell the difference,
Mhm.
obviously. But where that comes into animation, it kind of just ruins the art form if we're just kind of
Yeah.
sanitizing the art form by making it all. Obviously you can market something if it's like, oh, it looks just like this thing. Obviously it's probably how they marketed half this crap in the 80s and 90s. Is like, oh, this cartoon looks like Ninja Turtles because they have like all these realistic humans and they have these freakishly gross looking monsters, or stuff with like Transformers or Rambo or all these kind of stuff. It's like, oh, it looks Rambo just looks just like G.I. Joe. This Hulk Hogan show looks like just like G.I. Joe. We're not going to get into the politics of the actors about the, yeah, no. But you know what I mean? Big popular characters, they get shows marketed to look like this big marketable item, and that's
Hmm.
why that worked back in the day. But I think there is, yeah, the back to this drive of having very maximalist designs and cartoons back, where there's more dichotomy.
But even
Yeah.
then, this is just something that we've always been doing. There's always been
Hmm.
these periods of sanitization and staleness, going back to experimentation, then going
Yeah.
back to staleness, and then going back to it.
I
It's like
yeah,
a trend. It's like a classic design trend sort of thing that we've been doing for years and years and years.
yeah, it's like with Hanna-Barbera doing all this like house style cartoons, then you get like stuff with like Herculoids. You start getting like that semi-realistic style, and then you jump like 20 or so years, it's like, maybe we should do a thing like, oh, we have this artist that makes like Conan the Barbarian, and Herculoids was very popular back in the 60s. It's probably not the exact train of thought. Herculoids was back popular back in the 60s. Let's make something like that. Make like He-Man, obviously. And then you get like Transformers happen, and then GI Joe happens, all this kind of stuff. Uh and you know, they're making these like profitable toy commercials. That's the experiment for that with realism. And then we have all these cartoons that are popular toy commercials with a realistic style. Then you get the zany styles of like the late 80s, early 90s, and then the 90s where it was like even more. You're right, because like they have the show that starts the trend, and
Hmm.
sometimes somebody remembers it, and then you have trend followers. And
Yep.
that's why we get all these like samey like cartoons. That's why you get um I don't want to say, there's like not Cybercop. I went to like a retro toy store a couple weeks ago, and I could have sworn you could have told me I was watching like some generic live action 80s cartoon, Street Sharks, freaking something. A lot there was that era. Though every era has their like, I don't want to say slop, but they were trying to follow a trend. And
Hmm.
I could not tell you for the life of me what this show was. It probably could have been Brave Star for all I know. It's just like,
But obviously, what it feels like it's different now is, as I said previously, is because the internet will not shut the frick up about anything ever, and it's
nope.
actually kind of annoying.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
exactly. And I think, but in a good way, it's good to have people say there needs to be more
Yeah,
experimentation.
of course.
Yes.
Obviously,
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to have something marketable, but have a little bit of experiment when you're doing it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Of course. Yes. Yes.
Uh,
Having it be called out is important and all that. As long as you do it respectfully and not
or ethically.
roast
Hmm.
and not like roast one person for just expressing their love for a
Yeah,
something, whatever.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, okay, I actually have to go because for some reason like I said, I have to work today. So, oh, Doug just sent me the thing. I think I did download